Welcome to my intermediate level hot lap tutorial in the Porsche GT3 RSR around Silverstone Grand Prix. And here she is, low, purposeful, big in the backside, the fastest car in the NGT class once you learn to dial out the understeer. Here's the field, which includes every class from the FIA 2004 season. I like to race this way sometimes because tangling with both faster and slower cars keeps things interesting. Silverstone is a very fast, very technical and very challenging track. Almost every corner has to be driven as though part of a combination, and those corners that are not part of a combination are generally those that lead on to the long straights, which make a fast corner exit very important to your lap time. The curves can be very unforgiving, but as you see here, you've got to stick to the inside line on a lot of these second and third gear corners. Flirting with the curbage can be disastrous on this track, but necessary for a fast lap time, so it's a delicate balance. On top of all this, the track has some pretty extreme gradient changes, including one you'll see here at the club corner. Take a look at this downhill entry. This corner is so important that I shift the brake bias forward in the setup just to be able to drive it competitively. I use a very high coast differential setting in the Porsche to stabilize braking, and a very low power number to avoid spinning an inside wheel on corner exit and going off the track. Here is Abbey, a challenging uphill corner combination that needs to be driven aggressively so you can carry as much speed as possible through it. Bridge is a fast fifth gear corner that's complicated by a steep downhill exit, so you need to lift or brake in order to maintain your line. I cannot overemphasize how important it is to use the brakes simultaneously with the throttle to help orientate the car through these tight combinations. To go fast and maintain the right line in this rear heavy car, you need to use a subtle touch on the brakes for fine directional control and the steering wheel for gross directional control. Trail braking on corner turn-in will keep the nose tucked into the apex. It's very important. Here is Silverstone Grand Prix. Let's walk the track quickly. I'm sorry if the text is too small to read. Over-braking or otherwise mangling the cop's corner can ruin your lap no sooner than it's started. I drive it a little cautiously, entering the corner in fourth and upshifting on the apex. It gives me better control. At 12 o'clock on the diagram is one of the most challenging corner combinations I've ever driven, Maggots, Beckett's and Chapel. You need to keep the car perfectly balanced throughout the entire combination. Trail braking, downshifting before each apex, hitting the apexes very accurately so you can get back on the gas as soon as possible. The exit at Chapel is hugely important because it leads to the longest straight on the track, but in order to make a fast enough exit you have to keep the car very carefully poised on the inside line through Beckett's in third gear. Coming down the long straight, you need to set your gearing so that you're entering the red zone in sixth gear just as you're about to start braking for the fast corner at Stowe. At 4 o'clock on the diagram, Stowe is diagonally opposite Copse and it's a similar corner. If you drive it too tentatively it'll ruin your lap time. The AI tend to drive it in third gear. I take this corner in fourth and can gain about a quarter of a second on the AI as long as I time my downshift properly. Stable braking on entry is also very important to set you up for this corner. As I mentioned before, the downhill entry to club makes it very tricky. It's a pseudo chicane. For this and all the other fast second gear combinations on this track, it's very important to use a little bit of induced oversteer to maintain the car's speed through the curve. It gets you pointed in the right direction at the apex and allows as fast as possible an exit. At 6 o'clock, Abbey is another awkward pseudo chicane with a steep uphill gradient and very dangerous curbs. If you hit these curbs with the car out of balance, it'll ruin your day. Bridge, as I mentioned before, is a deceptively difficult, deceptively fast right-hander that I take in fifth, lifting before the downhill exit. The quick lift is necessary to keep the car on the outside line for the entry into Priory, which is a third gear corner. You briefly shift into fourth for the straight, and then down into second for the Brooklands Luffield combination. These are both long second gear corners where induced oversteer is your friend, and the reward is to be able to slingshot the car out of Luffield and hit the final straight as fast as you can, taking the curb at Woodcote. Let's see what all this looks like from the driver's point of view. From flat out and top gear I approach Copse in fourth, a little too fast so I miss the apex, but carry enough speed through the corner to get away with it. I'm in sixth gear for the entry into this combination, Downshifting into 5th and stabilising the car to get straight back on the gas. 4th gear, hit the apex, foot flat down. 3rd gear, hit the apex, foot down for the all-important exit. This launches me into the hangar straight as fast as possible and on exactly the right line, and I'm in 6th gear by the time I get to the bridge. For the entry to Stowe from flat out in top gear, you need to know your braking point precisely and brake with confidence. You need to time the downshift properly in order to maintain maximum revs doing this corner in 4th. You can do it in 3rd. Here is the steep downhill approach to club. Accurate downshifting from 5th to 2nd, and then hold the car on the inside line for the fast exit onto the straight. Here comes Abbey with its steep uphill incline. Very important to use all the road you can here with a very wide entry. Clip as much of the curb as you dare on the inside and carry as much speed as you can through the corner. That's the key here. That was the lift in 5th gear that enables you to maintain an outside line for this corner entry. Get back on the gas early, up into 4th, down into 2nd, grab some curb. Now it's all about using a combination of oversteer and subtle pressure on the brakes to bend the car around Luffield and launching into the long straight as early as possible, taking the curb at Woodcote. I shift without clutch blipping on the downshift, and I use my left foot to brake, allowing simultaneous brake of the throttle input. I'm no setup guru, but I pay a lot of attention to it, and here's what I do to make the Porsche go fast around Silverstone. Soft tyres all around for qualifying, 96% brake pressure, 55 front bias, 45 rear. Lower the car from the default settings, but don't let it bottom out. Power to maximum, vents to 2, and an aggressive wing setting of 6 to ensure high speed on the long straights in this track. This is a mainly right turning track, so don't be surprised if you end up with an asymmetrical setup. I go asymmetrical with tyre pressure, trying to achieve 200 kPa all around after a few hard laps. And I adjust camber asymmetrically if necessary in order to keep the tyres within 5 degrees between the inside and outside temperatures. I know very little about springs, but I tend to soften them for better grip. Once I get the rear wing setting right, which is very important to do first, I will generally try to soften the front ARB to dial out the remaining understeer, but not to the point at which the car becomes sloppy and loose. Okay, so here's one final look at the lap in the car chase view. This very challenging combination is all about dancing on the throttle and the brakes simultaneously to keep the car poised and the nose turned in. Do not go wide on this corner here, or it'll ruin your entry to the long straight. As I said before, timing the downshift into 4th gear is all important here. Gives you a distinct advantage against the AI, but not against a human who knows what he's doing. Again, hug the inside line here. And carry as much speed as you can through this combination because it's uphill. You see how I got on the gas early on that first apex makes a difference. Here's the crest of the hill. Lift to stay on the outside. And then yet again, oversteer and trail braking gets you through here at some speed. Well, that's it for this intermediate level tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. And please feel free to email or comment